Hello everyone, welcome to Pearson Bio Academy. If you are new to my channel, this is Fazna Imran and this is the place where you can top up your biology knowledge with our past paper explanation through very short and clear video series. Let's get diving. And today we'll be focusing on Pearson Edexcel International Advanced Level Paper reference WBI 1101, Unit 1, which covers molecules, diet, transport and health. In my very first video on Carbohydrate 1 series, I have given a complete introduction on your course outline. So today we'll be going to discuss about chemistry of life. And if you have already watched under chemistry of life, we can make some categorization. It includes carbohydrates, the chemistry of water, proteins, lipids, and enzymes. And today we will be focusing questions on 2020-2024. First, we will look at the dipole nature of water molecules. The dipole nature is characterized by slight positive charge on hydrogen atoms and a slight negative charge on the oxygen atoms in a water molecule. This occurs because the electrons are held closer to the oxygen than the hydrogen atoms. Although this is still a covalent bond, oxygen has a higher electronegativity, meaning it pulls the electron towards itself. As a result, there is an uneven charge or electron distribution across the water molecule, making it polar. And this polarity is what we refer to as dipole nature of water molecules, where both positive and negative charges are partially present throughout the molecule. First, we will look at the hydrogen bonds in water molecule. Due to the dipole nature of water, these molecules can form bonds called hydrogen bonds. According to your student book, the slightly negative oxygen atom of one water molecule attracts the positive hydrogen atoms of the other water molecules, creating a weak electrostatic attraction known as hydrogen bond. While each individual hydrogen bond is very weak, there are many of them which causes water molecules to stick together more than you might expect. And this property of hydrogen bonds brings several advantages to water molecules. Next, let's illustrate the formation of hydrogen bonds between water molecules. In a water molecule, a weak hydrogen bond forms between the slightly negative oxygen atom of one molecule and the slightly positive hydrogen atom of another. This interaction causes the water molecules to stick together, allowing them to combine and hold together closely. Now let's look at hydrogen bonds beyond water molecules. They are also essential in other structures, especially in proteins and DNA. In the secondary structure of proteins, hydrogen bonds form between two amino acids in the backbone. The oxygen in the carboxyl group and the hydrogen in the amine group gain slight charges due to uneven charge distribution, leading to hydrogen bond formation between them. In DNA, hydrogen bonds form between the nitrogenous bases of two strands, helping stabilize the double helix structure. Now let's look at how hydrogen bonds give water some unique properties. Due to these bonds, water has a high melting point and boiling point. While individual hydrogen bonds are weak, together they create strong interactions that require significant energy to change water's phases. This also results in a high specific heat capacity and high surface tension. Water molecules have stronger bonds with each other than with air, leading to high surface tension, which is crucial for processes like water transport in plants. Additionally, water shows both cohesive and adhesive properties. Cohesion refers to the bonding between water molecules, and adhesion refers to bonding with different molecules, both of which are due to hydrogen bonds. Finally, hydrogen bonding gives water its excellent solvent properties, a key aspect we will explore in detail as it's often highlighted in questions. When we look at water's solvent properties, molecules with polar groups or ionic compounds that can interact with water molecules are generally soluble in water. In contrast, molecules that lack these polar groups, often referred to as non-polar groups, usually cannot interact with water molecules and are generally insoluble. Let's examine how some molecules dissolve in water using sodium chloride as an example. Sodium chloride is an ionic compound that initially exists as a strong ionic lattice. When mixed with water, the ions dissociate. The slightly positive hydrogen atoms in water are attracted to the chloride ions surrounding them, while the slightly negative oxygen atoms are attracted to the sodium ions and surround them. This interaction between the partially charged water molecules and the ion forms what's called anion dipole interaction. It's different from hydrogen bond as it specifically involves ion interacting with water's partial charges. Now let's look at how glucose dissolves in water. Glucose contains multiple hydroxyl groups, making it a large molecule with many polar sites that can interact with water. As water molecules surround glucose, the slightly positive hydrogen atoms in water form hydrogen bonds with the negatively charged oxygen atoms in glucose's hydroxyl groups. Similarly, the slightly negative oxygen atoms in the water molecule interact with the hydrogen atoms in the glucose's hydroxyl groups. So these hydrogen bonds enable glucose to dissolve readily in water. Let's address this question: why fatty acids not dissolve in water or less soluble in water? When you think about sodium chloride and glucose, they are both able to dissolve well in water due to their polarity. In contrast, fatty acids have a different structure. They consist of long hydrophobic tail in both saturated and unsaturated fatty acids. And this hydrophobic tail is nonpolar and cannot interact with water. Even though the fatty acids have a carboxyl group which is polar, this polarity is very limited compared to the large nonpolar hydrocarbon chain. Because of this, fatty acids do not form hydrogen bonds with water molecule. Instead, the hydrophobic tails tend to repel water. So these are importance of water in lives. If we look those, water serves as a good transport medium and in both animals and in plants, and a good habitat because they have some specific unique characteristic, just like high heat capacity. They can serve as a good habitat for the aquatic animals. And it's a good solvent. It is a polar solvent. Therefore, in blood, most organic compounds is dissolved in water. And also they allow reactions to be happen. They give the aqueous medium to the chemical reactions to be occurred. Here is the first question from January 2020 paper. It asks about water as the solvent for transporting sodium chloride and glucose in the blood. You are given with a graph that shows the effect of temperature on the solubility of sodium chloride and glucose in water. If you look at the graph, the x-axis represents the temperature and the y-axis represents the solubility. And you can see different trends of solubility of these two compounds. And if you look at the glucose, its solubility increasing exponentially with the temperature. And if you look at the sodium chloride, you can see there is a slight increase in the solubility of sodium chloride. And this question is very important because in a very recent year paper, this question has been repeated with some modifications. And the question is, you have to compare and contrast the effect of temperature on the solubilities. So how this temperature is going to affect the solubility. So that's the question. And if you ask you to compare and contrast, you have to write some similarities and write some differences. Here, as a similarity, I can give both solubility are increasing with the temperature, even though in sodium chloride it's very slight, but still you can give this answer. And if you look the answer, the solubility of both sodium chloride and glucose increase along with the temperature increasement. However, solubility of sodium chloride increases linearly along with the temperature increasement, while glucose increases exponentially with the temperature. And temperature has a greater effect on solubility of the glucose than the solubility of the sodium chloride. So this is how you can present your answer, and I have highlighted the important points as well. The next question, the formula mass of sodium chloride is 58.44 and you have been asked to calculate the molecular mass of a glucose molecule. For answer this question, first you should know the structure of glucose. It's C6H12O6, so simple. And they have given the atomic mass for each and every element. So for carbon it's 12, so 12 times 6. And for hydrogen it's 1 times 12. And for oxygen it's 16, so 16 times 6. So the final answer is 180. The next part, you have been asked to calculate how many times greater the molecular mass of glucose than the formula mass of sodium chloride. So first for this question, we have find out the mass of glucose, it's 180. And we have given the formula mass of sodium chloride, it's 58.44. And to find out the times, how much is greater, you have to divide 180 by 58.44 and it's 3.08 times. The next question, you have been asked to suggest why there is a difference in the solubility of sodium chloride and glucose in water. If they have asked you to write a suggestion, then you should know you have to use the knowledge apart from the theory, and you have to bring some logical points to give your answer here. Maybe you might learn these things directly from your theory, but still you should be able to give the answer. First, we will look at the structure of these two compounds and their interaction with water molecules. So, sodium chloride and glucose solubility different in water because the several structural and interaction factor affects this one. So first we will look, glucose is a larger molecule than sodium chloride and can be surrounded by more number of water molecules than the sodium chloride. You can see that. And this allows for more interactions between glucose and water. Additionally, the glucose molecule have more polar groups, the hydroxyl. So therefore these polar groups enable glucose to form numerous hydrogen bonds and enhancing their solubility. And also sodium chloride is an ionic compound with a strong ionic lattice if you compare it with the glucose molecule. When it dissolves, it breaks down into sodium and chloride ion, which can interact with water through ion dipole interaction, but do not form hydrogen bonds like glucose does. And finally, the ionic bonds within the sodium chloride lattice are much stronger than the weaker intermolecular forces between two glucose molecules. So therefore, glucose can dissolve more readily in water as it can easily interact with water molecules, and whereas sodium chloride's strong ionic bonds require more energy to break apart. So you can give the answer like this. You can summarize your points. Glucose is a larger molecule than sodium chloride. Therefore, more water molecules can surround the glucose, and also glucose molecule contain more polygroups, resulting in more hydrogen bonds with water molecules. Thereby, it can have a greater solubility than sodium chloride. Additionally, the strength of bonds in between glucose molecules is very weak compared to the sodium chloride. Therefore, glucose might easily dissolve in water. And now let's look at the next question, which asks us to explain why fatty acids are less soluble in blood than the glucose and sodium chloride. We have actually touched on this concept before when discussing solubility. I explained earlier why fatty acids do not dissolve well in water, and primarily because they are nonpolar. And this nonpolar nature means they don't interact with water molecules in the same way that polar molecules like glucose and sodium chloride do. So you can structure your answer like this. Water is a polysolvent which is in blood, and fatty acids have nonpolar or hydrophobic tails. However, fatty acids cannot form hydrogen bond with the water molecules. Therefore, they will repel the water molecule. Thus, they are less soluble in blood. The next question is from January 2021 paper. It's a straightforward question. You have to describe the dipole nature of water. Maybe if they ask you to explain the dipole nature, then you have to give a reason. Here, just you have to describe the pattern of this charge distribution. So if you can remember this diagram, so you know oxygen have a slight negative and hydrogen have slight positive charge. This is called the dipole nature of the water molecule. So you can give your answer. There is a slight positive charge on hydrogen atom and a slight negative charge on oxygen. This gives dipole nature to the water molecules. The next question from June 2022 paper. Here you have to complete this description by writing one word each blank. So water has an uneven charge distribution, so it's described as a dipolar molecule. The hydrogen ends of the molecule have a very slightly positive charge, and water is involved in the transport of substances, so it's an important solvent in living organisms. Water is needed in chemical reactions called hydrolysis, and the reaction where water is removed that called the condensation. But here we are talking about hydrolysis reactions that break down disaccharides such as dash into glucose and galactose. We know one lactose molecule is consist of glucose and galactose, and during a hydrolysis reaction they will release these two monosaccharides. Therefore the answer is lactose. The next question from 2023 May paper. You have to draw a diagram of water molecule to show its dipole nature. It's very easy question. So here you can see, first you have to indicate the delta signs to denote that they have a very slight charges. The next question is from the January 2024 paper. I would say this is a more advanced questions on the chemistry of water, as it shows a shift in how questions are being asked. And this time they are asking you to explain the dipole nature of water rather than just describing it or drawing it, which was the focus in previous years. So let's dive into how to answer this. So simply you can give a reason for their polarity. So due to the uneven charge distribution across the molecule, there is a slight positive charge on hydrogen atom and a slight negative charge on oxygen, and this gives dipole nature to the water molecules. The next question asks you to draw a diagram that shows the hydrogen bond between two water molecules. This is a part of new trending in questioning where they are asking you to illustrate these type of hydrogen bonds specifically. So let's go over what you need to include in your drawing. First, remember that the hydrogen bond forms between the hydrogen atoms of one water molecule and the oxygen atom of another. And you will represent this with dotted lines between the oxygen in one water molecule and the hydrogen in the neighboring molecule. The dotted lines indicate hydrogen bonds, which are relatively weak compared to the covalent bonds, and these covalent bonds generally represented by solid lines. The next question asks you to complete a diagram to show the arrangement of two water molecules and a sodium ion when it dissolves. So this concept ties back to the solubility of sodium chloride in water. And if you can recall this picture, and this question will be straightforward. And you have to start your drawing by draw each water molecule with the oxygen atom pointing toward the sodium ion, as oxygen has a slight negative charge which can be attracted by the positive sodium ion. And you have to draw each water molecule in a V shape. You know, the oxygen is at the center and the two hydrogen atoms are angled away. And finally, you have to avoid overlapping circles or drawing solid lines connecting the water molecules to the sodium ions, as this would imply a stronger bond than is actually present. The final questions provides a graph that shows the solubility of 4 different chemicals at different temperatures. We have seen similar type of questions before in 2020 paper, and it was repeated in the 2024 January paper. So this highlights how past paper questions can be related to one another and how patterns in questions topics can be appear over the years. So let's go directly to the question. So in the question they have asked you to describe the effect of temperature on the solubility of these chemicals. So we will examine each chemical one by one to interpreting their trend from this graph. So starting with chemical A, we can observe that its solubility increases linearly as the temperature rises. So the increase is appear to be linear, so meaning it has a constant rate of increase as temperature goes up. For chemical B, solubility initially increases with the temperature up to 32 degrees Celsius, and beyond this point the solubility begins to decrease, showing a peak in solubility at this specific temperature of 32 degrees Celsius. And moving to chemical C, we see only a very slight increase in solubility as temperature increases, and this trend is much less pronounced compared to the chemicals A and B. And finally, chemical D behaves differently from the others as its solubility decreases as temperature rises. So in summary, we can describe the trends like this. The solubility of chemical A increases linearly along with the temperature increasement. However, the solubility of chemical B increases exponentially with the increasing temperature up to 32 degrees Celsius. And beyond this temperature, the solubility begins decrease with the temperature. The solubility of chemical C increases slightly with the temperature increasement, and the solubility of chemical D decreases with the temperature. So overall, different chemicals have different solubilities at different temperature. I hope this video was clear and informative. If you haven't already subscribed to Pearson Bio Academy, please subscribe to stay updated with all our future content. Don't forget to hit the like button if you found this helpful. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more videos coming soon.